A real standout in the class of 1970. Mr. John Ryan was a great football and a baseball player. A lot of people remember him for that. I understand he pitched 30, and I had to read this several times over because it sounded impossible, pitched 30 and a half consecutive scoreless innings. It's pretty fantastic. It's pretty fantastic, right? Striking out 18 in the game and 118 for the season. He ended up with a scholarship to play baseball at Tulane. Before he moved to Houston, he began to work for Alexander Industries, where he began work as vice president in 1976, so pretty quickly after leaving Tulane. He purchased the Houston branch of the company in 1990. It became Alexander Ryan Marine and Safety, one of the largest of its kind. Purchased the New Orleans branch in 1995, where he remained as CEO and president until retiring in 2018. He's been married to his wife just as long. They live in Spring, Texas. He was the 2010 recipient of the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year for oil and gas sector. He was appointed to the U.S. Coast Guard National Offshore Safety Advisory Committee, president of the Marine Services Association of Texas, and president of the U.S. Marine Safety Association. Sponsor of the Texas Alumnus Charity Invitational Fishing Tournament, and he supports numerous charities like MD Anderson Cancer Center, the Houston Food Bank, the Star of Hope Mission, Special Olympics, Citizens for Animal Protection, a very generous man. And although his address is Texas now, he's often in New Orleans, and I feel like he has never, in a sense, been anything other than a New Orleanian that way. There are lots of reasons to be proud for the things that he's accomplished in his life, and yet I think the only thing I ever hear him brag about is his own family. He's going to always want to show you pictures of his grandkids on his phone, and he's a very, very family-oriented man, which I think is maybe most impressive about him, of his 2 children and his 3 grandchildren. Mr. John Ryan, we are very, very proud to honor you in this way.
I need my cheaters. Reverend Father Brown, Jesuit priest and brothers, family and friends, and fellow Blue Jays. Special welcome to my class of 1970. 50 years ago, we walked across a stage together. Sorry we can't celebrate like we normally would, but we'll do that sometime shortly. I stand before you humbled by the honor of being asked to be the 2020 Alumnus of the Year. When Father Brown asked me to have lunch with him, I thought he was going to ask me to help offset the new turf at the stadium. When he asked me would I accept the Alumnus of the Year, I was speechless. My story begins short 3 blocks from here at 626 Sullivan Street. From birth to 4 years old, I lived in one half of a shotgun house on Sullivan Street. At the age of 4, my parents moved to Airline Park out in Metairie. A new Catholic grammar school had just opened, St. Mary Magdalene. They were looking for students to come to the school to fill it up. My parents enrolled me in kindergarten, and I had just made 4 years old. I was the youngest kid in the class, in the school. I finished my grammar school education at St. Mary Magdalene. Came time for high school. A small group of us wanted to go to Jesuit. Most of my other teammates and classmates were scheduled to go to Rummel High School. The Jesuit tuition back in 1967 was $800 a year. My mother took a job teaching at St. Mary Magdalene to cover my tuition. Transition from grammar school to high school meant new friends, new teammates. Athletically, I played football and baseball. So my freshman year, I went out for football. Now, you normally start workouts in shorts and T-shirts and helmets. And then at some point, they issue you equipment for the contact drills. So my locker mate next to me, who I just met a week before, we got our equipment issued, and he turned to me and he said, "John, how do you put these on?" He was holding the shoulder pads. And I said, "This kid's going to get killed," because all he had played is flag football. Well, fast forward 4 years later, he was an all-state running back. His name was Kurt Forshag. One of my closest grammar school and high school friends and teammates, after graduation, went to work for Otico. Now, Otico, when I was playing American Legion baseball here, Otico was the team sponsor. Well, I was a parish boy. My dad worked at NOPSI as a purchasing agent. I didn't have any idea who Otico was. So one season, we won the championship, and the sponsor, Otico, threw us a nice party to celebrate. After my graduation, I went to work in the oil patch. My company actually did work for Otico. Only then did I realize that Jack Laborde's dad was Doc Laborde, who was chairman of the board and CEO of Ocean Drilling and Exploration Company, Otico. By the way, that best friend and teammate, Emil Zinser, had a 44-year career in the offshore drilling industry and wound up running one of the largest drill rigs in the world. So the point is, those people you meet in your freshman year when you come here, you have no idea what they're going to wind up being in the long run. Like most parish boys, until we could drive, we took the Airline Highway Express bus home every day. After a full day of class, after football or baseball practice, Emil Zinser and I would walk to the bus at 2-lane in Carrollton and get on the bus to take home. Sometimes we would fall asleep on the bus. The bus driver would wake us up at Moysan Airport and say, "Get on the other bus and get back to your stop." Once I got my driver's license, I believe it was my sophomore year, my dad received a notice from the auto insurance company explaining that if I got a letter from school saying I was a good student, he could get a discount on the auto insurance. So I went to see Father Doyle, and he was the principal of Jesuit at that point. And I handed him the letter, and I asked him, could I get a letter stating that I was a good student? And he looked over his glasses, and he says, "You want me to lie?" I did get the letter, but he stretched the truth quite a bit. The Jesuit education was tough. I was a C student at best, with an occasional B and maybe an occasional D. I can vividly remember my teammates sitting on the steps of the gymnasium before practice, wondering whether we were going to be eligible or not. When I got to Tulane, I had a 3.8 average one semester. My dad asked me, "How come your grades at Tulane are much better than Jesuit?" I said, "Tulane's hard, easy, Jesuit's hard." My definition of a Jesuit education When you arrive as a freshman, they start pushing down on your head until you say, ouch. They keep you there for 4 years. At the end of 4 years, you get ready for graduation, pressure comes off, and you realize that you can conquer the world. While in high school, you tend to associate with your own classmates and teammates. Then you graduate and become one of the alumni, where the year of graduation doesn't make a difference. You're now part of an elite club with far-reaching assets. While thinking about that Jesuit tradition and closeness of the alumni, I gathered some thoughts. As examples, my college baseball coach at Tulane, Milt Retief, class of '51. Needed some real estate title work done. Kevin Heigl, class of '69. Needed a priest in New Orleans to marry my son, Father Tony McGinn, class of '66. I had some mechanical engineering that I needed done for an offshore project. Mike Kognovich, class of '68. In business, I needed some advice on how to handle a shipyard contract. Jack Laborde, class of '67. I had to take some clients out for a good seafood dinner in New Orleans. Mike Rodrigue, class of '71. I had an Admiralty maritime legal issue in business. Mike McGlone, class of '68. My father-in-law passed away. My mother-in-law had an office full of books, law books. She wanted to donate them. Federal Judge Honorable Jay Zaney, class of '69, with his Solus project, he donated the books to some new lawyer. I had some knee problems. Orthopedist Dr. Joe LaShorty, class of '53. I had a chipped tooth. Dr. Terry Fugetta, class of '70. Needed a cardiologist's opinion. Dr. Greg Tilton, class of 1970. Had a scratched eye. Ophthalmologist Dr. Donnie Cerise, class of '68. Many years ago, I needed a contact in Washington, D.C. for a U.S. Coast Guard meeting concerning the reflagging of the Q-80 tankers. Paul Stevens, class of '70. Lawyers, probably too many to mention, but all just Jesuit grads. Politicians, again, some good, some bad, but all Jesuit grads. And the list goes on. I didn't know some of these people in school, some casually, some not at all. They all became fellow Blue Jays, part of a group that you could call on for help and advice because you went through the same challenges, training, and preparation that we all went through. Several years ago, Janet and I were approached by Father Tony McGinn regarding the new multipurpose stadium. I reviewed the plans and blueprints and told Father McGinn that I would think about it. The longer I thought about it, I thought about the times at Scout Island with the fire ants for football practice. I thought about Marconi Drive, trying to get a field before Skeeter Thayard got there to practice baseball. So Janet and I decided it was the right thing to do. So the stadium became a reality. At the grand opening, Rusty Staub, God rest his soul, offered me some advice about throwing the first pitch out. Rusty came over and said, "John, I've done this a lot before. When the catcher brings you the ball, rub it up, wave at the crowd, and take 5 steps towards home plate. Don't embarrass yourself and Don't embarrass yourself and bounce the ball." So the catcher brought the ball out to me, and I rubbed it up. I looked over at Rusty, And I said, you know, you only get one shot at this. So I threw it from the rubber, and I didn't bounce it. I looked over at Rusty, and he says, you're lucky. Another story about the stadium, shortly after the grand opening, I had occasion to have lunch with some of my classmates at Acme. Upon finishing lunch, we were getting ready to leave, and I saw a mother and a young boy in a blue and white pinstripe uniform with a baseball hat that had a J on it walk into the restaurant. So as we were walking out, I walked up to him and I said, what year are you? And he said, freshman. What position you play? He said, shortstop. You win? Yes, sir. At that point, Mike Levy turns to him and he says, you know who this guy is? So at that point, I extended my hand and introduced myself to him and his mother. Kid, mouth was wide open, and his mother said, I thought you were dead. I have my family here today, and many of my classmates may remember my wife, Janet. We dated all during high school, broke up in college, got back together at the end of college. We met at a CYO back-to-school dance 52 years ago. I was 15, she was 14. We've been married 44 years now. She has been my rock and the foundation of our company. Excuse me. She's been my rock and the foundation of our family. I love you, kid. To my two sons, I'm sorry you didn't have the opportunity to come to this great institution. Had we lived in New Orleans, it may have been different. You both have made me very proud. To the rest of my extended family here, I thank you for your undying love and support for many years. In conclusion, I'd like to ask each one of you to remember what this great institution meant to each of us as we walked the stairwells and hallways. This school helped us to mold each one of us to the men we are today. It taught us about being challenged. It taught us about never quitting. It taught us about traditions. It taught us to be men of faith and men for others. Jesuit High School has guided its graduates to be men who make this world a better place. Go Blue Jays. God bless Jesuit High School.